I never argued with my son when he said it. I just stood there on the porch of the very house I helped him buy, listening as he shifted uncomfortably in the doorway. "Dad, you are not expected for Christmas this year," Daniel told me, his hands buried deep in his jacket pockets. He could not even look me in the eye. Expected. That word cut harder than it should have. Not. "We'd rather you didn't come." Not. "I'm sorry." Just cold, detached, like I was a contractor no longer needed on the job site. Behind him I caught sight of Claire moving around the kitchen, focused on a roast in the oven. She never looked up. The kids' drawings covered the fridge, and near the fireplace sat my grandson's boots, the same boots I bought him because he wanted to be like Grandpa. I kept my voice calm. "Did I do something wrong?" "It is not you, Dad," Daniel said quickly. "Claire's parents are flying in from Seattle this year, and they have traditions." "Traditions?" I nodded slowly. "Right. Maybe we can do brunch the day after," he added, like it was a consolation prize. I gave him a half smile. "Understood." Then I turned, walked back to my old Chevy, and drove off. By the time I reached the highway, the sting had settled deeper than the winter cold. I had never missed a Christmas with my son. Not during Desert Storm, not when his mother Linda passed, not even when I was hobbling on a cane after that training accident shattered my hip. And now I was being told I was not expected. What he did not know was that the house he stood in so proudly still had my fingerprints on every brick. For years ago, when Daniel and Claire were drowning in rent and bills, he called me, voice breaking. "Dad, I have a shot at a VA-backed loan, but my credit is wrecked. Can you help?" I pulled $30,000 out of my military pension for the down payment. I co-signed the mortgage. And every single month since then, $1,875 had been drafted from my account. Automatically. Without fail. I never asked for thanks. That is what fathers do. But that morning, driving back through the falling snow toward my little two-bedroom in Wasilla, I realized something. They had built high enough to forget who laid the foundation. At 11:42 a.m. I sat at my kitchen table with a stack of paperwork I had not touched in months. Mortgage records. Transfer receipts. Loan agreements. I dialed the bank. "Mr. Carter, how can we assist you today?" the woman asked politely. "I need to cancel a recurring payment," I said. She read it back to me. "Monthly mortgage draft, $1,875 to Wells Fargo. Would you like this paused or canceled completely?" I stared out the frosted window as snow fell slow and steady, blanketing the valley. "Cancelled," I said. "Effective immediately." She paused on the other end of the line. "Understood. The payment has been cancelled. Is there anything else we can help you with?" I shook my head, even managed a tired smile. "No, ma'am. That's all." I hung up and sat still for several minutes, listening only to the low hum of the refrigerator. For the first time in 4 years, my budget would finally balance. For the first time since Linda passed, maybe I could fix the water heater, buy new tires, refill the propane tank without stressing over every dollar. For the first time, I felt like I had stopped bleeding. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. But it was something cleaner, like that first deep breath after a long deployment. They didn't want me at Christmas? Fine. But they should have remembered one thing: you don't cut out the man who built your home and still expect the walls to stand forever. That night I didn't eat dinner. Not because I was punishing myself or sulking, just because I didn't feel like chewing. I poured a cup of black coffee, let it go cold on the table, and stared at the brown folder I hadn't opened in more than a year. Inside, arranged in perfect military order, were statements, bank records, transfer slips, and the co-signed deed. All the things Daniel and Claire never mentioned anymore. All the things I never brought up, because fathers don't keep score. Not until they're forced to. I pulled out a yellow legal pad and began listing dates. March 17th, down payment wired. April 3rd, first automatic withdrawal. July 10th, full roof repair after hail damage. October, $600 for heating when the furnace broke. December, the first Christmas after Linda passed. Claire cried then because they couldn't afford a tree. I drove through a snowstorm and brought them mine. She said, "We'll never forget this, Dad." She did. At 6:15 the next morning, I woke like I had for 30 years. No alarm, no hesitation. The army trains you to start your day before the world even breathes. I pulled on a flannel, boiled water for coffee, and opened the back door. Snow had dusted the steps, maybe an inch or two, light, quiet snow, the kind that erases footprints and makes everything look new. But I hadn't forgotten where I'd stood the day before. In front of the house I'd helped buy. Hearing that my presence was inconvenient. The coffee finished brewing, but I didn't drink it. Instead, I opened my phone. There it was, a message from Claire at 9:43 p.m. the night before. "Daniel said you canceled the mortgage transfer. I assume this is temporary? Can we talk? No hi, Dad. No apology. Not even my name. Just transfer." I stared at the screen for a long time before typing a short reply. "Let's." He called later that afternoon. I let it ring twice before answering. "Dad, Claire told me what you did." I waited. "You canceled the house payments." Still I waited. I thought maybe it was a mistake, or a warning. "No, Daniel. It wasn't a warning. It was a correction." He went silent. I continued. "I've been paying your mortgage, your furnace, your furniture, even the school uniforms for your kids for 4 years. And what I heard in return was that I wasn't welcome at Christmas. That's fine. But from now on, I'm also not responsible for funding your life. Dad, you know we're in a tough spot. You've been in a tough spot for a decade. That's not fair. What's not fair, Daniel, is taking money from a man you won't even save a chair for at your table." The silence that followed was heavy. I could hear the shame bleeding through the phone, or maybe just resentment. "I don't want this to become a fight," he finally said. "It's not a fight," I replied. "For a fight, we'd have to be on the same battlefield. Right now you're in a warm house I paid for. And I'm sitting in a cold kitchen, eating off cracked plates. Claire's parents just have higher expectations, that's all. They're refined people." That word, refined. Like I'd walked out of the jungle and tracked snow into their art gallery. I ended the call without saying goodbye. That night I went into the garage and pulled the tarp off a steel footlocker I hadn't touched in years. The same one I carried through Kuwait, Bosnia, and Fort Bragg. Inside were my old uniform, a pair of dog tags, and a battered green notebook I kept during deployments. Pages half in code, half in memory. What to pack, what to watch for, how to track an enemy who smiles at you. I'd been a soldier for 22 years. And for the past 10, I'd tried to forget that man. Swapped battle plans for birthday cards, combat boots for slippers. But yesterday reminded me of something. A good soldier doesn't just fight. He studies. He prepares. And when the time comes, he moves with precision. I closed the footlocker. Tomorrow I'd start gathering everything. By Friday, I already had 3 separate folders spread across the table. Folder 1 held financial evidence, receipts, monthly withdrawals, repair invoices, scanned checks, even Amazon orders they had shipped to my address when their own card had been declined. Altogether, I had nearly $96,000 worth of proof showing the life I had been funding. Folder 2 contained screenshots. Facebook posts bragging. "So grateful to be hosting again this year. Our home feels magical at Christmas." Instagram photos, Claire posting wine glasses lined up on the kitchen island I had installed myself. Caption: Christmas Eve at the Jenkins house. Blessed life. Folder 3 was more personal, voice notes. I had started recording myself at night, dates, memories, small details, an audio log of the ways I had been erased. I did not know yet how I would use them, but I knew this much: if they wanted to erase me from their story, they were going to have to fight harder. On Sunday afternoon, Claire called, not a text, a real call. I almost didn't answer. Dennis, she began, voice bright and brittle, like glass under pressure. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Is that so? I asked. I think emotions ran too high, and maybe you overreacted a little. Overreacted. That word hit like a slap. I leaned against my kitchen counter. Claire, what part of this is confusing for you? She faltered. You're punishing Josh and the kids, and yourself. I'm not punishing anyone, I said flatly. I'm correcting an imbalance. But the kids love you. This doesn't have to change everything, does it? There was a beat of silence. Then she drove the knife in. You're acting unstable, Dennis. There it was. They could no longer control the money, so they went after the man. I steadied my voice, even though it felt unfamiliar in my own ears. Let me be very clear. I'm done funding people who treat me like a burden. That's not what this is about. No? I asked. Then what is it about? She had no answer. Tell your parents I won't be picking them up from the airport this year, or any year, I said and hung up. For the first time in 5 years, I opened the good bottle of scotch I had been saving since Linda's funeral. I poured 2 fingers, raised it toward her photo on the mantel, and whispered, I'm back on mission. By Tuesday morning, the gloves were off. I woke to 6 missed calls and a voicemail from an unfamiliar number. A woman's voice, polite, clipped. Mr. Carroll, my name is Dana Withers. I'm a journalist with the Anchorage Sentinel. We're preparing a story on elder isolation and abandonment during the holidays. Your name came up. Please call me back. Mentioned by whom? I did not even need to ask. They were escalating. And they were sloppy. I called her back. Not because I wanted to explain, but because soldiers don't ignore intelligence. You gather it, assess the terrain, and move accordingly. Dana sounded younger than I expected. Mid-30s, sharp, precise. Thank you for calling back, Mr. Carroll. Just Dennis, I said. Dennis, I'll be respectful of your time. I received a pitch from someone in your extended family, a woman named Catherine Jenkins, Claire's mother. She shared concerns that you might be experiencing cognitive decline, that maybe recent decisions about family support and property had been made under stress. She even gave me a copy of a cancelled mortgage transfer and some emails. Emails. My jaw tightened. Is this a profile piece? I asked. Or an ambush? There was a pause. To be honest, it started as one. But I've done my own digging, and I have a few questions. I let her ask. I answered plainly, 30 years of service, no debt, no criminal record. Yes, I had cancelled the mortgage transfers I had voluntarily covered for nearly 5 years. She went quiet for a moment. Finally, she asked, would you be willing to provide documentation to support that timeline? For the first time in days, I smiled. I already have a folder prepared. We met that afternoon in a neutral spot, a coffee shop downtown. I wore a pressed flannel, clean jeans, clean shave, not to impress, but to look exactly like what I was, sane, clear-eyed, dangerous if pushed. She flipped through the folder slowly, scanning the highlighted bank statements, the repair invoices, the photos of their house I had taken that morning from the street. You co-signed this house? She asked. Yes. And after all that, they still told you not to come for Christmas? They didn't say I wasn't welcome, I corrected. They said I wasn't expected. She winced. That's worse. By Thursday, the story broke. Not the front page, not yet, but page 7 of the Sentinel Lifestyle section carried the headline. The Forgotten Contributor, One Veteran's Quiet Christmas. It was not an attack piece. It was calm, almost reverent. The photo showed me in profile, sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee in hand. I had asked her not to use the ones with Maria's picture in the frame, and she respected that. The article did not name Aaron or Josh, but anyone in Anchorage with a Facebook account could put it together. By lunchtime, the comments were blowing up. God bless this man. My dad went through the same thing. Erin Jenkins is still posting about their humble holiday while living in a house paid for by her father-in-law. Yikes. This generation needs to learn respect. At 4:12 p.m., Josh called. I let it go to voicemail. Then Erin. Then Catherine. Then another blocked number. Finally, I picked up. Dennis, this is Cody Jenkins. Erin's father. The banker. The orchestrator. Cody, I said evenly. To what do I owe the honor? You need to retract that article. I didn't write it. But you gave her the information. I gave her the truth. He inhaled, sharp and slow. You're embarrassing my family. Then maybe your family should try behaving in ways less embarrassing. This will have consequences. I laughed once, dry and humorless. I watched a convoy burn in Fallujah. You think I'm afraid of gossip in Anchorage? You're playing a dangerous game, old man. I leaned back in my chair. No, Cody. I'm just finally keeping score. That night I drove by their house again. Not to stalk, not to threaten, just to look. The lights were dark. The yard, usually cluttered with inflatable reindeer and plastic snowmen, stood bare. A for sale sign on the lawn told me they were running scared. At 10:34 p.m., another email came from Josh. Subject: I'm sorry. Body: I don't know how we got here. I know I failed you. Please, can we talk? I miss you. The kids miss you too. There was an attachment, a photo of me holding Ben, my grandson at age 3, wearing my old army cap crooked on his head. Underneath, in shaky child's handwriting, I love you, Grandpa. Merry Christmas. I stared at that picture for a long time. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I cried. Quietly. No sobs, no shaking shoulders, just 2 tears. One for the boy I raised. One for the man he became. The next morning I printed the photo, framed it, and set it on the mantel beside Maria's. I didn't call Josh back. Not yet. Let him sit in the silence he created. December 24th, 6:41 p.m. Anchorage was wrapped in that kind of stillness that only comes when snow falls slow and clean over everything you've built, and everything you've lost. I sat across the street from their house, engine off, lights dimmed. Erin had gone all out this year, golden lights tracing every gutter, wreaths in every window, glowing reindeer flanking the walkway like guards at a private palace. I saw silhouettes moving behind the curtains. Guests in dress coats, wine glasses in hand. Laughter spilling faintly through the frost-lined windows. A Christmas dinner. 12 guests. Their curated life on full display, and not one of them knew who had paid for every inch of it. But tonight they would. In the briefcase on my passenger seat were 12 identical packets. Each one neatly organized, printed bank statements, photos of renovation receipts in my name, a copy of the Sentinel article marked in red, social media screenshots, including Erin's post just 2 days earlier. Feeling grateful this Christmas. Everything we have, we earned together. A lie polished until it gleamed. I stepped out of the truck, straightened the collar of my navy pea coat, and walked toward the house I had financed but was never welcome in. The door was unlocked. Of course it was. Safe neighborhoods don't expect intrusions from the man who built them. I let myself in. The warmth hit first, heat and cinnamon sugar and wine. Then the hush. That precise instant when a roomful of people sensed the air shift. 12 faces turned toward me. Some curious. Some confused. And a few, Erin's and Josh's, went ghost white. Dennis? Erin's voice shrieked. What are you doing here? Josh rose from the table, napkins still in his lap. Dad? I raised one hand. Not to silence them, but to show I wasn't there for chaos. I was there for clarity. I won't stay long, I said. But since I wasn't expected for dinner, I thought I'd at least drop off a few gifts. I moved slowly around the table, placing a packet in front of each guest. Erin's mother reached for hers with trembling fingers. Catherine Jenkins, queen of the local garden club, champion of etiquette and control. She read the top line of the statement, and blinked like she'd been slapped. Aaron let out a sharp gasp. You came here to humiliate us. No, I said quietly. I came here to correct the record. One of the men at the table, mid-50s, heavy blazer, gold cufflinks, cleared his throat. These documents say you paid the mortgage on this house every month for 4 years? Josh stood there. No coat, no gloves, just a crumpled sweatshirt and eyes red like he hadn't slept. Behind him, the driveway was empty. No Aaron, no kids. Just him. Dad, he said, voice low. Can I come in? I didn't answer right away. I studied him, the boy I'd raised, the man who'd told me I wasn't expected for Christmas. He shifted from foot to foot like a soldier waiting for permission to speak. Finally, I stepped aside. 5 minutes, I said. He came in slowly, like the floor might collapse under him. He sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Maria once set out pies at Thanksgiving, where I'd signed the co-signer's paperwork for the house he was about to lose. He glanced at the framed photo of Ben on the mantel, then back at me. His mouth opened, but no words came. Mortgage notice? I asked. He nodded, throat tight. I didn't realize how much you were covering. I thought. That's your problem. I cut in. You didn't think. You just let me carry it because it was easier than admitting you couldn't. He swallowed hard. Aaron's parents said. I leaned forward. Aaron's parents don't pay your bills, Josh. They don't patch your roof, they don't cover your furnace, and they sure as hell didn't buy those boots for Ben. I did. His eyes watered. I messed up. Yeah, I said flat. You did. For a long time, we sat in silence, only the heater ticking in the corner. Finally, I leaned back. You told me I wasn't expected. That wasn't about Christmas. That was about erasing me. And you succeeded, for a while. But now the truth's on the table, and you're left holding it. He dropped his head into his hands. I don't know how to fix this. I took a slow sip of coffee. You start by standing on your own 2 feet. You start by being the kind of father your kids can respect without someone else footing the bill. You start by remembering that family isn't a performance. It's a debt you can't outsource. Josh didn't argue. He just nodded, quiet, broken in a way I hadn't seen since the day Maria died. After a moment I stood. 5 minutes are up. He looked up at me, eyes pleading, but I only opened the door. The cold air rushed in. He walked out without another word. I closed the door, locked it, and stood for a moment in the stillness. My heart didn't feel light, but it felt steady. Finished. Because sometimes justice isn't about payback. Sometimes it's just about finally setting down the weight you were never meant to carry. Josh stood there, cheeks raw from the wind, dark circles under his eyes. He looked like a man 10 years older than the son I'd seen at Christmas. Dad, he said quietly. I stepped aside without a word. He walked in slowly, scanning the house like he was entering a chapel after years away, taking in the repaired cabinet door, the oiled floorboards, the quiet warmth. This place looks good, he said. It's what happens when you stop handing your paycheck to people who don't respect you, I replied. He winced. We sat. Not in awkward silence, but in the kind that carries weight. Finally, he spoke. I saw the letter. It's bad. I nodded. We've fallen behind. I didn't realize how much. He stopped himself. I mean, I did. I just didn't want to face it. I let him talk. It's foreclosure now, he admitted. Erin's been a wreck. Her parents left early. Catherine won't even speak to her. Smart woman. I muttered. Dad, I know you're angry. I know you feel. I don't feel anything, I said flatly. Not anymore. That hit harder than if I'd shouted. Josh reached into his jacket and unfolded a crumpled sheet of paper. I did something, he said. I took it. His handwriting was sloppy, but the numbers were precise. $226,875. Down payment, mortgage, repairs, utilities, school supplies, holidays. You kept track of all this? I asked. He shook his head. I didn't. But I knew where to look. Your emails. The bank deposits. I pieced it together. I set the paper down. You missed a few. I figured, he said, nodding. But it's enough to see it. He looked at me, eyes heavy. I chose them over you. And now they're gone, or turning on us. And I'm standing here wondering how I let it get this far. I stayed silent. Aaron keeps saying, we need him to bail us out. He's family. It's his duty. And for the first time, I said no. That made me look up. I told her the man who paid our bills for 5 years doesn't owe us a damn thing. That maybe we owe him everything. I leaned back in my chair. And what did she say to that? She cried. He admitted. Then packed a bag. Another silence. Different this time. He wasn't here for money. He was here for something else. Dad, he said softly, do you think we'll ever be okay again? I walked to the mantel, picked up Maria's photo, then the picture of Ben wearing my old army cap. We're not going back, I said. But we might go forward. If you want a relationship, you'll have to build it brick by brick. Not with money. With respect. With truth. He nodded, eyes wet. And the mortgage? He asked quietly. Not my problem, I said. But maybe now you'll finally learn how to solve it yourself. When he left, I stood on the porch, watching him walk to his car. No hugs, no false goodbyes. But halfway down the driveway, he turned back. Dad, I was proud of you. The way you stood up for yourself. I didn't say a word. Just nodded. That was enough. Inside, I turned off the porch light, sat by the fire, and for the first time in years, I let myself believe this wasn't revenge. It was rescue. Rescue from a life where I traded my worth for silence, and maybe rescue for a son who was finally learning what a father looks like. The call came just before 10 p.m. I let it ring 4 times, not out of hesitation, but intention. Let her wait. Let her wonder. Finally, I answered. Dennis. Erin's voice was breathless, forced, like she'd rehearsed sincerity in a mirror. I didn't know who else to call. I said nothing. I don't even know where to start, she continued. Still, I stayed silent. Finally, she filled the void. The house is under foreclosure review. Josh says you won't help. He says you're done. I let the quiet stretch. I just think we need to sit down, talk this through. For the kids. The kids? I repeated. The words hung in the air like a prop, something to lean on now that everything else had collapsed. Calm, steady, Erin, I said. There's nothing to talk through. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You're being dramatic. I almost laughed. You told me my food was too spicy, my conversation too simple. You told me I wasn't fit to sit at your holiday table. That was a misunderstanding. No, Erin. I cut in. That was clarity. She faltered, then shifted tone. Fine. Maybe things were said. But that doesn't undo years of support, of family. The kids think the world of you. Are you really going to throw that away? My grip tightened on the phone. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm done carrying what was never mine to carry. You're punishing us. No, I said flat. I'm protecting what I have left. Silence. Then her voice hardened. Well, she said coldly, you should know Cody and I have spoken to an attorney. He thinks we may have grounds to argue that the mortgage payments were a form of implied gift, that you willingly contributed as a legal party. I almost laughed. I was hoping maybe we could talk about Ben. That was her angle. I saw it instantly. This wasn't a visit, it was a pivot. She wasn't here for me. She was here to protect her last strand of influence, through the only innocent part of this wreckage. I kept my face still. Ben's welcome here any time. I meant maybe you and I could coordinate. She pressed. Keep things consistent for him. You mean? I asked. You want to say in how I grandparent? Her lips pressed in. I just think it's important for him to understand unity. Unity? I repeated. You spent 5 years erasing me from the family portrait. Now you want me to color inside your lines? Her cheeks flushed. You don't have to be cruel. I'm not, I said evenly. Cruel would have been silence. This is just clarity. A long beat passed. Then she stood. I'm moving back to Portland, she said. Taking some time. Resetting. I didn't ask whether that reset was for her, or for the image she was trying to salvage. She stepped toward the door, then turned back, one hand on the knob. One day, she said, you'll see I was trying my best. I measured her face, not to wound but to weigh. I hope that comforts you, I answered. She nodded once, like that response had closed something inside her. Then she left. No perfume, no slammed door. Just absence, the honest kind. I stayed still for a few minutes. Then I walked to the mantel, straightened Maria's photo, and ran my thumb along the frame. I handled it, I whispered. You'd have done it quieter, I know. But I handled it. I poured a cup of coffee and sat by the window. And I remembered something Maria once told me when Josh was still a teenager, and Aaron was nothing more than a smile in a photograph. Some people walk into your life holding gifts. Others walk in holding blueprints, plans for what they want to build on top of your foundation. I hadn't understood that back then. Now I did. Erin never came to join the family. She came to curate it. And when the pieces didn't match her design, she shaved down the edges. Tried to erase the ones that didn't shine. I was never going to fit her model, so she excluded me. Until the model cracked. Then she remembered who poured the concrete beneath it all. The truth is, this wasn't closure. It was extraction. A surgical removal of a false bond. No stitches, just air, honesty, and a house that finally stopped echoing with the question, what did I do wrong? I cleaned the table, rinsed the cups, and stood in the same kitchen Maria once loved, the same kitchen Erin once critiqued. This tile's a bit outdated, she'd said the first time she came here. You could probably get a loan to redo it. That same tile now caught the firelight from the stove like polished memory. I smiled at it. It might not have impressed Erin, but it had never betrayed me. The next morning, at 9:03 a.m., I walked into the law office. No appointment, no ceremony. Just a file folder in one hand and a thermos of coffee in the other. Susan Baxter had been my attorney for 15 years. She handled our wills when Maria was first diagnosed. The kind of woman who never wasted time with small talk unless it had legal consequences. Dennis Carroll, she said as I walked in. Either someone's suing you or you're finally updating your living trust. I dropped the folder onto her desk. Both. She flipped it open, scanning through the documents I'd assembled for 6 weeks. Mortgage statements, transfer records, notes, photos, screenshots. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. Once I thought this might be about your son, she said. It is, I replied. And the daughter-in-law. She's already lost the war. I'm just locking the gates. We got to work. Within an hour, Susan had updated my will to remove Josh and Erin as beneficiaries. Established a custodial Roth IRA in Ben's name, seeded with a modest but growing investment. Drafted a letter clarifying that all financial support I had given Josh and Erin was voluntary, not binding, not recurring. And she added one final clause to my estate: any attempt to contest it would result in immediate forfeiture. What about the house? She asked, glancing at the Zillow printout I'd clipped of their home now listed as is. They'll lose it, I said. And I'm not lifting a finger. At 11:20, just as we finished, Susan turned her laptop toward me. You should see this. On the screen was a public filing, bank records tied to a newly opened custodial account in Ben's name. Trustee, Joshua Carroll. I stared. When? 3 days ago. Amount, $2,500. Not much, but clean. I leaned back slowly. It wasn't pride. It wasn't forgiveness. It was pause. For once, Josh wasn't reacting. He was initiating. Not to impress me, not to buy me back. But because maybe, just maybe, something had finally cracked through the varnish of his adulthood. That afternoon, I drove to the edge of town. Parked in a grocery store lot. Neutral ground. From the cab of my truck, I watched the street. And thought of everything Josh didn't know. That I'd already changed my will. That I'd shifted his legacy into Ben's future. I was no longer the man who waited for dinner invitations. I had become the man who built a legacy in silence. I remembered the conversation I had with Maria when Josh was 12. He had flunked a math test, lied about it, and tried to blame the teacher. She looked at me across the kitchen table and said, "One day your son will understand that the truth doesn't need permission. It needs patience." I didn't understand it then. I do now. I drove home at sunset. No calls, no stops. Just me and the feeling that this war, long and cold and silent, was finally ending. Not because they had given up, but because I had stopped showing up on a battlefield that had long since been mine. That night I lit a fire, set the last letter from Ben down beside me, and opened the folder one last time. Not to add anything or to use it against anyone. And to honor the facts. Because when your life is rewritten by others for years, the facts become your fortress. And for the first time in years, I felt unattainable. Not because I had won. But because I had finally let go of the need to win. I woke up before dawn. I didn't set my alarm, my body knew. December 25th. My first Christmas in 29 years alone. The stove was off. Silence filled the room. No children's feet. No radio in the kitchen with Bing Crosby. Just frost on the windows and the breath of the house, finally frozen. I got up slowly. The day would come one way or another. At 6:45 I lit a fire, brewed black coffee in the old percolator, and went out onto the porch. 3 to 4 inches of snow had fallen overnight. A white sheet. No tracks, no tires. I thought about Maria. How she used to put a candle in the window every Christmas morning. So that anyone who got lost, she whispered, would know that home still shines for them. I hadn't done that in years. But that morning I did. At 8:12 a.m. rental car pulled into the yard. It crunched on the ice and stopped. The door opened and Ben stepped out. Alone. In an oversized winter coat and a knitted hat that barely covered his ears. In his hands was something wrapped in newspaper, held carefully like a shrine. I stepped out of the porch to meet him. At first no words, just a long, frozen look, 2 generations, left outside in different ways but the same. "Dad dropped me off at a roadside cafe," Ben finally said. "He said they were going to church. I said I could handle it." I nodded. "Hungry?" "Always." We sat down at the table. 2 plates, 2 cups. He barely spoke, just munching on his scrambled eggs as if it were his first real meal in a week. Maybe it was. Then he pushed the package toward me. "I found this in Grandma's closet," he said. "Behind the shoe boxes." I unwrapped the paper. Inside was a small, handmade wooden box. My old tokens, a rosary, a yellowed photo of Josh in a red stroller, and underneath it, a neatly folded note. For the day he remembers who he is. My breath caught. The letter wasn't signed, but I knew. Ben looked at the box as if it were the answer to a question he hadn't even had time to ask yet. "She told me stories about you," he whispered. "About awards, missions. But also about Christmas, about pancakes, about how you carried me on your shoulders like I weighed nothing." I couldn't speak. I just listened. "I think I remember," he said quietly. "I was 4. It was snowing, and you carried me to the truck when I fell asleep on the couch. You were heavy." I finally breathed, my voice breaking treacherously. But I never denied it. He looked up. "And you know what? I don't want to forget. So can I stay here? At least until school starts." I nodded. Not harshly, Just enough. Of course, I said. This is your home, too. He smiled, uncertainly, crookedly, but sincerely. I know it's not like theirs. I waved at the old wallpaper and cracked tiles. It's better here, he said. It's real. That day we walked along the snowy path behind the house. No presents, no music. Just the crunch of snow underfoot and a boy who was gradually remembering that love doesn't always scream. When we got back, I heated the stove, and Ben, without being asked, chopped the wood himself. That night, when he fell asleep on the couch by the fire, I opened the folder for the last time. The same one with the evidence, with the war on paper. And put it in the fireplace. I watched it burn slowly and quietly. Not because I had forgiven. Not because I had forgotten. But because I no longer needed to carry it. Ben rolled over in his sleep. I covered him with a blanket and whispered through the dance of flames. Welcome home, soldier. And if you have ever been excluded, underestimated, or erased from life, let this be a reminder. True justice does not always scream. Sometimes it quietly enters its home, lights a candle in the window, and waits for the one who should return. If this story touched you, leave a comment, tell me where you are looking from. Click like if you have had to rebuild yourself anew. And subscribe if you believe that quiet strength is also strength. Because sometimes the strongest structures are built in silence.